The sky over Hamburg was so thick with exploding flak, pilots said it felt like flying through a minefield suspended in midair. And right at the heart of it was a tiny B-17 skipper named Lieutenant Glenn Rojon. Into the fire. The morning of the mission started like any other in England. Fog rolling across the runway, engines coughing awake, and young men climbing into planes knowing some wouldn't return. Inside the cockpit of B-17 Lucky Lady, Lieutenant Glenn Rojon, nicknamed the Little Skipper because he barely cleared 5-7, adjusted his oxygen mask and prepared for one of the deadliest raids of 1943. His co-pilot, Second Lieutenant William Leet, ran a hand across the cold metal yoke. Their target was Hamburg's oil refineries, critical to the Nazi war machine. The men knew what it meant. Hamburg had the heaviest flak in Germany. As they climbed into formation with hundreds of flying fortresses, sunlight glinted off the wings like a moving mirror of steel. Rojon glanced at the empty seat behind him, knowing the odds of survival were barely 1 in 5. Still, he pushed the throttles forward. The mission had begun. The wall of black smoke hours later, as they crossed into enemy territory, the first puff of black smoke erupted just beneath the chin turret. The explosion rocked the aircraft like a giant hammer. Then another, closer, then 5. The flak gunners below were dialed in, creating a solid wall of bursting shells designed to shred bombers mid-air. The intercom crackled with warnings as each crewman braced himself. Through the canopy, Rojon saw the horrific sight no pilot ever forgets. B-17s falling like burning comets. Some spiraled into the sea. Some broke apart mid-air. Some simply vanished in a flash of fire. Still, the formation pushed forward, because if even a few got through, the blow to the German refineries could cripple their fuel production for weeks. Rojon wiped the sweat from his eyes despite the freezing temperature. "Hold her steady," Leet muttered. "We're flying into hell." The smoke target. The closer they came to Hamburg, the thicker the sky became, so dense with exploding shrapnel it was like flying through black cotton.
30 seconds.
The navigator called out the final heading. "Target ahead." 30 seconds. Rojon scanned the horizon, searching for the marker. Then there it was. A plume of purple smoke drifting upward from the docks. The smoke target. The bombardier, Lieutenant Jacobs, moved his face to the Norden bomb site, fingers trembling but trained. "Bombardier has control," Rojon announced. Immediately, the aircraft dipped into automatic flight. The B-17 seemed to fly itself straight into a tunnel of black bursts. The plane jolted as a near miss slammed into the fuselage. One of the waist gunners screamed that metal fragments tore through his jacket. Jacobs whispered through the intercom, "Steady, steady." The world outside vibrated with explosions. Bombs away, and then it happened. Bombs away! The ship suddenly felt lighter, almost floating upward as 12 500-pound bombs dropped cleanly from the bay, plunging toward the refinery below. Rojon immediately grabbed the controls and yanked the plane into a hard right bank, diving through a wall of smoke to break the flak pattern. Behind them, the refinery erupted in a chain of fireballs, steel tanks ripping apart like metal flowers. Flames rolled across the docks, sending shockwaves that even the men at 20,000 feet could feel. But there was no time to admire the destruction. The second phase of every bombing mission had begun, getting home alive. And for most crews, that was where fate made its cruel decisions. The Luftwaffe arrives. No sooner had they turned than the tail gunner's scream shattered the intercom. "Fighters, 7 o'clock low." Out of the clouds rose 6 Messerschmitt Bf-109s, slicing upward like silver daggers. Their cannons lit the sky with yellow flashes as they charged directly into the bomber stream. Tracers ripped past the tail, punching holes the size of fists in the aluminum. The B-17's 50 caliber guns answered with thunder. The left waist gunner yelled, "I got one," as a 109 burst into flames and spiraled downward. But another fighter slipped beneath them, firing through the belly. Bullets tore through the radio room, shredding wires and sending sparks across the floor. The radio operator ducked just in time. Rojon clenched his teeth so hard his jaw ached. "Hang on, boys," he muttered. "We're not dying today." Then the inevitable hit came. A cannon round slammed into the number 3 engine. The entire wing shuddered violently. Flames danced across the cowling. "Engine 3's on fire!" Leet shouted. Rojon didn't hesitate. He cut the fuel lines, feathered the propeller, and prayed the wind would starve the fire. Seconds later, the flames died, but the engine was dead. The fortress lost altitude fast, sinking below the formation. Below them, the sky was even more dangerous. Isolated bombers were prime targets. Rojon steadied the aircraft with the remaining engines screaming at full power. The controls felt heavy, like dragging an anchor through the sky.
If anyone wants to bail,
"We stay
say
together,"
it
he
now.
told his crew. "If anyone wants to bail, say it now." Silence answered him. They were staying. With one engine gone, the Lucky Lady limped toward the North Sea. The crew could still hear distant explosions behind them, Germany's hatred echoing in the
Save
air.
it who needs it.
Minutes felt like hours. The gunner
Save
with the
it for
torn
someone who
jacket
needs
was
it.
now bleeding from shrapnel in his leg, but he refused morphine. "Save it for someone who needs it," he grunted. The bomber crept toward the coastline at barely 160 knots, just fast enough to stay airborne. The navigator plotted a new course to avoid known fighter bases. Every man on board scanned the sky for another attack. But luck was with them. Cloud cover rolled in, hiding the damaged B-17 like a blanket from the hunter's eyes. Over the channel, the tension
Lucky Lady,
finally broke.
one engine out, heavy
Some
damage,
men cried.
multiple wounded.
Some prayed. Some simply stared at the horizon in silence. Back in England, the base received the report. Lucky Lady, one engine out, heavy damage, multiple wounded. Fire trucks lined the runway. Rojon brought the aircraft down with careful, shaking hands. The landing gear groaned under the uneven weight. The bomber touched down hard, skidding for a full 20 seconds before coming to a stop. When the engines shut off, the silence was deafening. Ground crews ran forward, pulling open hatches. The first thing they noticed was the holes, hundreds of them peppering the fuselage from nose to tail. It was a miracle the plane held together at all. Rojon climbed out last, exhausted but alive. His commanding officer simply stared and said, "I didn't think I'd see you boys again." The little skipper smiled. "We dropped our bombs," he replied. "That's what counts." The Hamburg refineries burned for days, cutting deep into Germany's fuel supply. It was a strategic victory,
We dropped our bombs.
but one paid for
That's what
with
counts.
dozens of American aircraft and hundreds of young lives. The crews who survived the mission never forgot the sight of planes exploding in midair, or the smell of burning metal drifting across the sky. For Rojon's crew, the mission was the moment they truly understood the cost of war. They weren't just fighting the German military, they were fighting time, fate, and the sky itself. And every time they stepped into that aircraft afterward, they carried the memory of the men who never returned. Yet they kept flying, because that was the mission. Lieutenant Glenn Rojon flew dozens of missions after Hamburg, each one as dangerous as the last. But his
Let's go
crew
get 'em,
always
boys.
remembered him as the calm voice in the cockpit, the little skipper who could fly through hell and bring them home. After the war, historians would call the Hamburg raids metal storms, moments where the sky turned into a weapon. But to the men inside those bombers, it was something simpler: survival. The B-17 became legendary for its ability to take
If
damage.
anyone wants to bail,
But
say
aircraft
it
don't
now.
make it home alone. It takes pilots like Rojon, co-pilots like Leet, gunners who fight until the barrels melt, and crews who refuse to give up. Their courage turned missions into history. Their survival turned history into legend. And the story of the Lucky Lady remains one of the most unforgettable chapters in the air war over Europe.